is why you sent away my bride. 5 years. 5 years I have been denied my bride. I could have continued to darken the sun and poison your waters, but instead I have indulged you. This only because I wanted my temple built.
Well, it definitely sounds like Gurzil is not happy, as you heard in that intro. He's been waiting quite a while for his bride. That's why we have Baden Hill, the sequel to Gurzil. And before we get into my thoughts on Baden Hill, first off, I want to thank you, Anonymous, for sending me both these books. I really, really appreciate it, especially this hardback copy of Gurzil. It is absolutely beautiful and amazing, and I love it. Signed and everything, and when I started this channel, I never expected to have one of my quotes on the back of this book, or any book cover at all. So thank you so much for that. That is just really awesome, and honestly, it just made my day when this showed up. And I'm really happy to have that copy, so thank you for that. But anyway, let's get into Baden Hill by Anonymous. This is the second book in the Wars of Wrath. So this book has everything. You've got your pagans, you've got your Christians, you've got your demon queens, you've got your dragon gods, you've got the African and Middle East, Egypt, and European fantasy, historical fantasy, and it's all there. And just like Gurzil, this has been a fantastic, fun, adventurous, and exciting ride to the epic battle on Baden Hill. So I'll try my best to keep this spoiler free, but if you have not picked up Anonymous's Wars of Wrath series, you've got to check it out. This is just by far one of the best historical fantasies I have ever read, hands down. And I am absolutely loving Baden Hill. Everything about this book is just fantastic. One of my favorite aspects about Baden Hill is the fact that it really kind of plays into that Arthurian legend. But it goes beyond that. We've also got Vikings in this one as well. And I just love every aspect of that. And Guinevere, one of the main characters in this particular book, in this series. She is not just a lady of the realm. She is a warrior as well. And some of the battle scenes that get involved within this book, some of the action-packed sequences that we have there with Guinevere in the battle, and George and Arthur and all that stuff is just absolutely awesome. I love the way that engages throughout the book, and from start to finish, this book has kept me interested with every aspect of every character's storyline within. And it's like I said about Gurzil, it is one of the best, most well-written historical fantasy books I've ever had the opportunity to read. And I love how it just draws you in. Like the first book, Gurzil, it also has those quotes at the beginning of each and every chapter from some kind of historical figure. What was interesting this time around is while Gurzil had quotes mainly from medieval England and medieval Europe and quotes from around that region and different people from that timeline, this book throws in some more modern quotes from like the 1940s, 1950s, and I think there's even one from a military leader in 2010 that was thrown in there as well. And I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect to this, because I've kind of come to expect these quotes from all this medieval time frame, but a few quotes from more modern times were thrown into this storyline as well, which I just thought was really awesome. And I kind of like that because, of course, at the beginning of each chapter, the quotes are very applicable to the events happening within that chapter as well. And I also really liked how Excalibur came about with the Arthurian legend that we have within this book. Now, I've certainly seen a lot of Arthurian type legends that have happened, you know, Sword in the Stone, classic kind of stuff. And Arthur is always kind of portrayed as this hero in most of these legends, where he's like this great king and this hero, and he's just a leader of the people and all that kind of stuff. So a very, very positive vibe. What I really liked about this is the King Arthur and those who were following him, and Lancelot and all that kind of, all those sidekicks in the Round Table and all that kind of stuff. The different historical aspects in this historical fantasy that are thrown in there, and the different viewpoint perspective on how certain elements came to be. it just felt so much more real and realistic, and more grounded in reality, I should say, than other Arthurian legends that I've had the opportunity to read or watch, and I really enjoyed that aspect about it. And that, for me, was an absolute top bonus to how this story played out and how things came about within this world that is being portrayed through this historical fantasy, and I really enjoyed that. Essentially, with this book, it is the Wars of Wrath, and it's kind of a storyline where you have both Saxons are fighting against a joint force between pagans and Christians, and I'll just kind of leave it at that because I don't want to get too much into spoilers. But generally, it was the pagans at war with the Christians, but now they had a common enemy, which they had to somehow overcome their differences and trust each other, even though there's not a lot of trust between the two groups, in order to survive, basically. And that was just a really cool aspect of how this storyline played out. And I absolutely love that. Now, one of the other things that I really liked about this is the Merlin and the Druids. That was really kind of fun getting into. Every Merlin story I've ever heard, I always envisioned Merlin as just like this wizard type character, but definitely he's portrayed better as a druid in this book versus the other versions of Merlin that I've seen. And what really kind of surprised me, actually, was Merlin was one-handed, and I'm going to leave it at that because I'm not going to explain why Merlin only has one hand. But I love the scene and explains that, and I'll just leave it at that because, again, I don't want to get too much into spoiler territory. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free, but I love that aspect of it because that kind of was very, very different than what I had become used to in envisioning Merlin. And I love that about it because it's a very different portrayal of these classic mythological historical characters that we typically see through ancient European legends and English legends, specifically from the UK or British legends, which for me just made it that much more interesting because the characters felt so much more real, and that is just a bonus all around. Gurzil, of course, the dragon horned god, is absolutely entertaining in every respect. Gurzil is definitely not happy with the way things have gone, and definitely his character, his persona, I feel like we're getting a lot more of Gurzil within this book. In the first book, Gurzil, I feel like there's more within this story regarding Gurzil than we found in the previous books, which was also a great, fantastic added bonus. And I really, really like that about it because if there's one thing that I enjoy, it's dragons. Dragons rock. I love dragons, and I love a story that has dragons in it. Now, what's really fun about this is that this is historical fantasy, but it's a historical fantasy set in a world where these things are real. Whereas if you were to go back to medieval Europe, dragons didn't really exist. But in this world, Gurzil is a real god. He is a physical entity in the physical realm. And he is a real god going up against the Christian gods. And that, to me, is just fantastic because part of the great thing about fantasy is those things that don't exist in our world are a reality of the world in which you're reading about. And that is part of what makes it so much fun. And I just love that aspect of it. I love the mixing of myth, legend, and fantasy in a historical setting surrounding, events and stuff that may very well have been real. I mean, we don't always know, right? But at the end of the day, this really was an entertaining read. I loved reading this book. I enjoyed every aspect to it. It is definitely highly rated. About the only thing that I could really say was a drawback to this book, which, as I understand, this has been corrected and addressed. So take it with a grain of salt, but there were some parts of the book where the exact same paragraph was repeated twice. And I was kind of like, wait, they just said that a paragraph ago. That was really my only nitpick about this particular edition. So, I mean, that's not even a drawback to the story, but if I had to pick one thing that was a bit of a minus on that, it would be that. And like I said, I think it's already been addressed from my understanding, so it's really not anything to worry too much about. But it did kind of throw me off when I was reading it a bit. But yeah, that's addressed. So I'm sure if you order your copy of Baden Hill, which you should do, and if you have not ordered Gurzil, do so as well. Get both Gurzil and Baden Hill. I know there's a third book coming out in the Wars of Wrath, and just everything about it I absolutely loved. So definitely check it out. Those are my thoughts on Baden Hill. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, until next time, keep on reading. Bye!